What up, everybody? It's your boy Knocademus.
Knef CEO.
Welcome to the Knoc and Knef podcast.
So today it's going to be a touchy topic. We've been having a lot of violent issues around the Bay Area and now actually around the country.
Yeah.
It seems to be like there is a attack on our Asian community, and we just want to talk about that right now. What do you think? What have you heard? What are we talking about?
Living here in the Bay Area, we've been seeing a lot of this going on since the pandemic started. First of all, let's talk about the fuel to what started all of this. Mm-hmm. I don't care what nobody says. This has nothing to do with politics, Republican, Democrat. It has to do with the way President Trump presented the whole coronavirus to America. He made the Asian community the villain.
Kung flu.
The Kung flu, the China flu, whatever. Mm-hmm. He made it seem like the world's messed up because of China.
Yeah. People, especially when they hear that, they have no other alternative but to think that the Asian community are the ones that brought this over here. We know it started in China, but that doesn't mean that you alienate the people that are in your community, that are living day to day, going to school, going to work with you, dealing with you. My kids are Asian, half Asian. So I'm involved in the community. I've been involved in the community for, my son's 15, and obviously looking at him, he's a step away from it, but his mom isn't. Mm-hmm. His grandmother and great grandmother aren't. Mm-hmm. So it makes me feel some type of way to know that they're affected by it, that this could possibly happen to them. Mm-hmm. And it makes me kind of look at our whole society, our whole culture as a different thing, And so I just wonder, I wonder how we're gonna deal with the situation, what people are thinking, and also we have to talk about what's gonna need to happen for these acts of violence to stop in our community.
Yeah, but first, what is the root? Like, I can't lie. When I first seen the first thing they showed here in the Bay Area, these dudes were running up behind old Asian people and shoving them to the ground. Why?
Yeah, for what?
For what? It wasn't like they had some type of altercation or anything like that. They were just shoving these people to the ground.
Yeah.
So, for one, I would like to know what is the root of the origin of all of this. And then, the fact of the matter is, right now, with the coronavirus, with all the stuff we've seen, the social injustice, we have all stood together for the last year. Mm-hmm. Trying to fight injustice. Mm-hmm. Why now all of a sudden do we have people causing more injustice?
Yeah. I think it's difficult because you said a lot in that, and I'm going to address a few different things. The Black and gay Asian community is very, very complicated. We have a very complicated history and present. You hear a lot of people saying that, especially in the Bay Area, a lot of black people have been attacking Asians. Mm-hmm. And then we have this guy in Atlanta who went to multiple different Asian establishments and mm-hmm. killed multiple different Asian women, including, I think, two other races. I don't know if maybe it was white and Hispanic. I'm not too sure. But he killed 6 Asian women and 2 other people, and was going to another one before he got arrested. Mm-hmm. The first thing they talked about was he had a sex addiction.
But what's that got to do with you gunning down Asians?
If you gun down one Asian person and kill them, I would think, okay, that's murder. If you gun down 2, okay, you're a little crazy, that's still murder. But if you gun down 6, that's a hate crime. You're racist.
Hate crime. You're a serial killer. You get what I'm saying? It's all of that.
And the conversations that I have on Facebook or IM or whatever, these conversations that I'm having, a lot of my white friends, associates, they don't make excuses for the action, but they make excuses for what he really is.
No, they're not making an excuse. They're trying to say it's not what it really is. It's not an excuse. But they don't want to label him as a domestic terrorist, and they don't want to label him as a hate crime.
Yeah.
But the fact of the matter is, it's a hate crime.
But I think when it comes to them, and this is something that I've told multiple times, I said, I think you look at him like you look at yourself, this mirror image. And I think that when you hear somebody say he's racist, it makes you think that they're talking about all white people, right? And I think that's a bigger picture, because that's a bigger issue, because when you see somebody, he kills multiple people of one race, one gender, whatever. You say, oh, that person's a sexist, or that person's a bigot, or that person's a this, because he has a group of people that he's targeting.
Yeah.
So my first reaction, oh, he killed 6 Asian women? Oh, he's racist. Not that he has a sex addiction. Because if you think about it, why would you just target Asian people if you had a sex addiction?
Let's stop this altogether. The sex addiction has nothing to do with murder. You don't kill a person in the act of sex. So what does sex addiction have to do with him going out murdering these people?
And on top of that, if you heard the whole story, I think it was the chief of police said that he had a bad day. I have bad days. I don't go out and
the chief of police in the press conference said, well, he just had a bad day. For one, do you personally know this motherfucker? I'm sorry, I have to say it that way. But do you personally know this motherfucker to know he was having a bad day?
That's an instant pillow for this guy to land on. Oh, he's having a bad day. You're already giving him compassion.
Well, my thing is,
compassion that these Asian women didn't get.
They handled the whole situation the same way the Charleston PD handled Dylan Ruth.
That's the same
They handled it the exact same way. And what was Dylan Ruth?
Yeah.
He was a white, racist serial killer.
Yeah. So, like I said, there's this line that a lot of people don't want to cross. We always hear this. Well, what else happened? What's behind it? But when it's us getting mowed down or shot and killed,
he must have been. He must have been a criminal. He must have been a criminal.
Well, he must. And then they show the worst parts of us on TV. They show this guy, and they were like, oh, he either had a bad day or he had a sex addiction. Like, come on, man. Like, I'm sick of this. Right, I was tired when it was happening to a bunch of black people, and it's still happening. I'm fatigued at that, and now I'm fatigued at this.
Okay.
And probably for different reasons than most people are thinking. You know, I'm tired of being on the front line of every activist thing. When it comes to us, when it comes to black people. We are yelling at the top of our lungs, injustice, 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 injustice. And some people, white, Hispanic, Asian, follow suit and say, yes, there is injustice. But the masses don't. But we're still here constantly screaming, injustice, 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 injustice. But when something happens to one of our other brethren, they now are screaming with us, injustice, 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 injustice. I heard this lady, and she said that we want our political officials to speak for us. We want our political officials to speak for us. We want our police to be held accountable. We want these racist people, white men, to be held accountable and put in jail. That sounds very familiar.
Yeah.
It sounds very familiar to what we've been saying for the last however many years.
Yeah.
There is no difference.
There is no difference, but once it hits home, that's when there is a difference. Now it's hitting home.
I tell people, I say, look, the nuclear power plant blows up in China, It doesn't affect you until you catch a three-headed fish. So the Black and Asian community has had a tumultuous, that relationship in history, and it's very odd to me to see the things that they're going through are the same things that we go through all the time, and not just now. You're older than me.
Mm-hmm.
Throughout history.
And then too, so you got to look at it too. It's immigrant status. They were immigrants. Some of them were brought here for the railroads. They were, this and that. We were brought here for slavery. You get what I'm saying? It's immigrant issues, and then it's low man on the totem pole issues.
Yeah.
It's all of that kind of stuff. But then too, me being older than you, I can kind of reflect on my parents' ideologies with Asians. Mm-hmm. Not my parents, my parents' generation. Mm-hmm. But I can tell you how their generation felt, because my mother's generation felt like Asian people came here and looked down on African Americans. Mm-hmm. And felt like, she's even said, some of them that she worked with felt like Black people are in the place they're in because they're supposed to be there. That kind of stuff. Mm-hmm. And so my mother's generation does not have a very fond relationship with the Asian community. Mm-hmm. And see, when I was young, when I was young, we lived in Gardena, which is a large Asian American community in Southern California. Had Asian friends, all of that. I never seen the issues my mother was talking about until later. Then, like, during the Civil Rights Movement, it's well documented that, there were some Asian people who felt like they should have been fighting with the African Americans, but Asian leadership in the communities was like, that's not our fight. We stay quiet and let them be loud and get that attention, and that's the reason why they're getting what they're getting. Mm. As long as we stay silent and stay under the radar, we're not going to get the attention they're getting. Mm-hmm. So that's another thing. Me growing up in Los Angeles, part of what fueled some of the issues between Blacks and Asians in Los Angeles during the LA riots was the Natasha Harling situation, where the young girl got killed by an Asian merchant because she thought the little girl was trying to steal $1.59 bottle of orange juice. Yeah.
Shot in the back of the head.
So in me growing up in Los Angeles, there's always been some kind of tension, not always, but it got to the point where there was some tension between the Black and Asian community. And then too, another thing, growing up in Los Angeles, we seen certain things happen to us. And we seen crime in the Asian community that never made it to the news at all. You could see, there could be a drive-by shooting in the Black community and it's all on the news. Mm. I was at a bowling alley in Chinatown one time. 2 Chinese gangs got into it, or a Chinese and a Korean gang got into it, and they were pulling out AKs and lighting up cars. Mm. Turned one car into Swiss cheese. Never made the news. Mm. The whole scenario happened. It was never even talked about in the news.
That's crazy.
So, the undercurrent of that is, in the media, they always made us look like we were vicious animals. When the same crime goes on in the Black community, goes in the white community, goes on in the Hispanic community, goes on in the Asian community. Mm-hmm.
It's hard. It's hard because, like you said, the way the Asian community and the Black community have coexisted for however many years has been this weird bottom of the totem pole type thing, right? But when the Black community and the Asian community clash, it is this LA riots, people outside with guns, Black people, looting and pillaging, but the Asian people trying to protect themselves, but then Asian people, have done stuff to Black people to cause these things. And literally, we're fighting over the same stuff.
Yeah.
We're fighting over the same rights. We're fighting over the same ability to live. We're fighting over the same families. We're fighting over the same ground. Whereas if we got together and fought together, then we wouldn't be dealing with a lot of this stuff.
True.
Especially if the Hispanics got involved.
True, but see, this is another thing you have to realize when it comes to race relations. Biggest problem with race relations in America for blacks compared to other races is every other race has a home.
Yeah.
We're African Americans. This is our home. And we still don't get treated like it's home. Chinese people learn culture. They learn all of this stuff. You think Chinese kids go to Chinese school on Saturdays? You know what I mean? Because they learn their culture as well as learning the culture in which they live in here in America. And you think Hispanic people have linked to all the way back to all of their culture. Here in America, African Americans born in America do not have a link with Africa.
Yeah.
You get what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. We have to dig that up ourselves. And you think in history, America has done a great job of trying to make sure we don't have access to that.
Well, and it's not even that plus. There's a lot of people who didn't come from Africa.
Right.
They're Native Americans.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, I asked my dad, "What are you?" Oh, my grandma said she was Indian. She was a full, had the whole, and I'm like, oh.
Black Native Americans, yeah.
100%. So they've done this weird, cut this line of history and just been like, oh, that didn't exist. This is who you are from now.
Yeah.
Well, what do you mean this is who I am?
And then too, like I said, a lot of it's cultural. It's family orientated. It's cultural. It's a whole lot of different places where blacks and Asians don't meet. We don't cross, intersect.
Yeah.
All of us don't, because I'm not going to say that black people don't have culture and they don't have family history and all of that. But there's some that are not in tune with it. Yeah. And then too, you got to look. These are people who have made. They've always been a self-contained community. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. They take care of their own. Yeah. They don't bother nobody else. But the biggest problem is blacks and Hispanics and Asians have always had to live in the same spaces. Yeah. And when you look at opportunities given, opportunities have been given to everybody else except us. You think blacks, Asians, Mexicans, and Middle Eastern people live in the same communities. Why is it that you go to those communities and the liquor stores, the markets, and all that are owned by everybody except the African Americans? Yeah. But the African Americans are the predominant people in that community. Mm-hmm. If you look at laws, people come here from other countries, refugees, everything. When you come here from another country and you get refugee, you can get refugee aid. They'll give you a low or no interest business loan and all of that. These are luxuries that people who are born in America don't even get if they're black. Yeah. So that also creates some, how would I say, resentment towards these other people. Yeah. You know, everything this is your neighborhood. Because a lot of times blacks and Asians don't even live in the same parts of the neighborhood.
But I think resentment is a great word to use when it comes to minority communities and how we're scratching for everything we get.
Just like even in school, it is assumed that an Asian kid is smarter than a black kid. Yeah. Even though the valedictorian of your school might be a black girl. Mm-hmm. But it was assumed that the Asian kids in the school are smarter. And that's something that stereotypically had always been done. And like I said, that also causes resentment.
But I think in this case, especially with this white guy going and killing these Asian women, for me personally, I think it's causing resentment because I think the fight is not only our fight, because that has happened to us multiple times, a million times.
Documented well.
And now that it's happened to this community, now all of a sudden this uprising is going to come and all this attention and things will change most likely because it's not our community.
And then things will change for them. It will still not change for everyone.
And I think that is where my feelings are very skewed or very resentful towards it. Now, I'm not going to sit here and say we don't do what we need to do for the Asian community because we have to.
Yeah.
Being minorities, we have to. And we can't stop doing for what we need to do for ourselves.
True.
So I think that all in all, when it comes down to it, we all have to be in this together.
Yeah.
We do. We can't let one of us succumb to, white supremacy, suppression, the closing of a mouth.
Yeah. And what needs to happen is there needs to be an honest dialogue between the two communities, because it's like, for one, the tensions need to be dispelled. For two, black people always show up for everybody. Yeah. Anytime there's injustice, we are there fighting with whoever it is, whether it be Asians, whether it be white people, whether it be gay people, whether it be Hispanic people. We're always there in full force because we understand what it's like to be oppressed and to be treated different.
I think people need to understand that we're tired, though.
Yeah.
I think I'm tired of seeing this happen on a daily. I'm tired of seeing this cop shoot through the door of a house 6 times, and now he's going on trial. But he didn't know who was behind the door. Now, I think he shot a white dude, but this is the type of things that happen all the time in our community.
Yeah, but my thing is this also. What also needs to happen is we as a country and we as citizens need to take back the control of what goes on in our community, because we've given too much power to law enforcement and politicians. When we vote those politicians in, they're supposed to do as we say. They are representatives. And we need to make sure they're representing us and what we want to happen in our community.
Well, see, and that's the thing. That's exactly what that this lady said. I don't know if she was a politician or who she was, but she was like, we elected you guys to do what we need you to do for our community. Mm-hmm. I'm here to speak up for our community, and you are supposed to do your job for us, which is exactly how it should be.
Yeah.
They nominated this person. Now she's going and calling them to task. That's the same thing that we need to do every single time something happens. Every single time the DA drops some charges on some BS, we have to call him to task. Every single time a cop kills an innocent person, call him to task. Every single time a lawyer doesn't put his full oomph, of the law behind defending or prosecuting somebody, call him to task. A judge who's just throwing out sentences like Pez, call him to task. The president, anybody, a teacher, I don't care who it is. As a community spokesperson or as a community together, we need to step up and be like, look, you are not doing your best for us.
And I feel the same way, but you got to remember, a lot of this is easier said than done because most people are consumed in their own lives and their own problems.
That's true.
So with this problem between the African American community and the Asian community and the Asian community and the white community, we really need to band together to get this handled. Because my thing is, I don't care what nobody says, racism against one group is racism against all groups. And that's Absolutely. What the biggest problem with it is. I feel like all other races don't realize this until they're victimized.
Absolutely.
Because perfect example of what we're saying, this group of people I'm about to speak on has always been marginalized, and nobody defends them the way they should. That is the Native American community.
Yeah.
And so, and my thing is, just as we're rallying now, trying to make sure the Asian community gets treated better, we should have been rallying around the Native American community because they're truly the first community here.
Yeah.
They were the first community to live in this country. And we have let this country do them so wrong.
Yeah. And the thing is, we have to rally all together.
All together. We have.
It's a great point that you're making that racism against one person is, or against one community is racism against all
communities.
Because it is. Because like I said, the things that's happened in this Asian community, or these workers, has happened to us, which has happened to Native Americans.
It's happened to Hispanics.
100%. And so we have to stop thinking like, oh, that's them. Like, let's not,
And like I said, another group, like I said, I'm not leaving any groups out. The Middle Eastern group,
I was going to say that.
Because Middle Eastern and Muslim, because all Muslims aren't Middle Eastern.
Well, you got to think. I think too, you figure 9/11 happened, and it was crazy because even at that time I thought, this group of people is feeling what black people feel. Mm-hmm. Every time another group of people goes through something, I feel like, oh, now they feel what black people feel. So now that's making me feel it's like, you walk around a corner and stub your toe, and then somebody else stub it, be like, mm-hmm. See?
Well,
and it's hard because you don't want to be petty like that.
No.
But at the same time, it's like, see, let's all move this table. Let's all get this out of the way.
It's interesting. I had a director at work who's of German and Middle Eastern descent, and he looks Middle Eastern. And in the beginning, he wore a beard. Mm-hmm. And after 9/11, he went to the airport. And he said that it wasn't even after 9/11. It was after that though. Mm-hmm. But it was something was going on.
Yeah.
And that the U.S. was being discriminative towards Middle Eastern people. And he was like, he came to work and he didn't have a beard no more. And I was like, what happened to the beard? He said, man, I got tired of getting extra searched in the airports when I was traveling. And I was like, wow.
But think about that. Think about this. You're black. Mm-hmm. You can't shave your black off.
Nope.
And that's the point.
Yeah.
That's what I try to tell everybody. Like, look, you can take your police uniform off. Mm-hmm. You can shave your beard off. Mm-hmm. You can change out of your gang paraphernalia and walk down the street. Mm-hmm. I can't. I'm always this.
Yeah.
I'm always this.
But in defense of what you're saying, but that's the same for Asians.
Same thing for Asians.
You're always going to be Asian. And matter of fact, I felt sorry for the Asian community when Trump did that whole Kung Flu thing.
Oh, yeah.
Because you had people who weren't even Chinese.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Getting square. You think all of a sudden it was open season on Koreans, Japanese, Filipinos, all of these different groups that are not Chinese.
You know what? Another thing I do want to bring up too about the community is they have a lot of the same issues in their community as we have.
Yes, we have. Mm-hmm.
They have a color. They have colorization in the
dark
community.
Skin, light skin,
dark skin, like Filipino, Chinese, Korean, Japanese, and all these levels, just like we do. Yeah. And so they're going through the same fights and same turmoil as black people all the time. Mm-hmm. It was funny because I asked, like I said, my kids, Filipino, Asian. It's like I asked their family, like, why are these people wearing gloves and why are they protecting themselves and why are they're like porcelain skin? It's the closest thing to white. The closer you are to white, the more sought after you are by a certain type of people. And then you have Filipinos who are darker skinned, and they are looked at a certain type of way.
But you got to remember too, Filipinos aren't Asian.
It's
Filipinos are Pacific Islanders, and people people that don't know the history of the Philippines. The Philippines were Aboriginal people that look just like that.
That's true.
They were invaded by the Spaniards. That's why they have Spanish surnames. And then they were invaded again by the Japanese.
Yeah, there you go.
And that's why you have the Filipinos that look the way they look now. Because if you look back through the course of history, Filipinos didn't always look that way.
Because my kid's mom looks Spanish. Mm-hmm. But she's Filipino.
So that's one of those things. Like I said, people that don't know the history of something, they're assuming. Sure. But it's more to that than what
there's a lot of layers that go into it. But we just want to address this topic. You know, we don't want to have something that's so close to us when it comes to race relations and people in our lives that we, you know, hold true and hold dear, you know, and just say nothing about it.
Yeah.
You know,
And what needs to happen is we need to come together and defend each other.
Absolutely.
Because the problem is too many people make assumptions about somebody without really doing the research. So let's stand together and stand with the Asian community. Because just as we needed people to stand with us, now they need us to stand with them.
That's not. I'm Knef. Till next time.
Peace.